Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we cut through the noise and get straight to the most illuminating insights from your essential reading. I'm your host speaker, and I'm genuinely excited to be diving into a powerful topic with my brilliant colleague.
It's great to be here, and I'm ready to unpack some uh, pretty profound shifts that shape our world, especially for those of you who appreciate getting a deeper understanding of, societal dynamics.
Today we're taking a deep dive into Chapter 13 of Human Societies, a brief introduction. It's all about change and development.
Right.
Our mission is to trace this relentless evolution of societies, how they adapt, how they resist, sometimes how they entirely redefine themselves under, well, immense pressures.
Yeah, a lot.
We're talking about everything from natural shifts to global forces, and we'll make sure every key concept is explained clearly, kind of like you're visualizing it right along with us.
The goal is that you'll walk away with a really well-informed understanding of why societies look the way they do today, and why change isn't just constant, it's character defining.
Exactly. We're aiming for those aha moments, connecting the dots.
Give you that clearer picture of the intricate processes at play. Let's jump in.
Okay, let's unpack this fundamental idea. Change is the one constant in human history. Just like biological life evolves, societies undergo what the chapter calls cultural evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, early theories like unilinear cultural evolution, or UCE, well, they incorrectly suggested all societies followed one single path towards a Western ideal.
Right. That idea has been rightly rejected.
Definitely. But the core truth remains. Societies do evolve, they're constantly adjusting.
And this adjustment, it isn't really optional, is it? What's crucial here is that for a society to persist, it absolutely has to adapt to its environment.
Right.
That means responding to changes in its natural surroundings, think dramatic climate shifts or, resource scarcity in its cultural environment, things like the rise of neighboring powers or, like we've seen recently, global pandemics.
Without that adaptability.
Well, groups face really severe challenges.
And this process of adjustment, particularly when you have traditional groups encountering larger, more dominant societies, and they get drawn into a global system, it's not a one-way street.
No, not at all. It profoundly impacts everyone involved. The colonizer, the colonized.
It influences the entire global human experience, really.
Yeah.
So what actually propels this constant societal evolution? You mentioned society striving for equilibrium, but the environments just aren't static.
Exactly. And the archaeological record,
Yeah.
particularly what's termed the Fifth World.
Ah, yes, the groups that failed to adapt.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of
Yeah.
the ultimate consequence of being unable to change, disappearance.
So these pressures, how do they show up?
Well, they can manifest in incredibly diverse ways.
Mm.
On one side, you've got dynamic changes in the natural environment.
Like weather patterns.
Could be short-term shifts like
Yeah.
that, yeah. Or the more profound long-term impacts of climate change. Major environmental shifts invariably force equally major adaptations in how people live, how they find food, where they settle.
And then there's the cultural environment.
Just as dynamic, maybe even more so. We see pressures from things like population booms or declines, maybe foreign invasions.
Or even just new leaders emerging.
Exactly. These forces, internal and external, can dramatically alter a society's core values, its ideas, its cognitive systems. I mean, how they literally perceive the world.
And when we connect this to the bigger picture, things like globalization and development.
Yeah. They can introduce an incredibly rapid, sometimes overwhelming pace of change.
Like technology.
Think about how quickly new tech, from computers to cell phones and now AI, how it's completely reshaped Western societies.
And new trade goods appearing,
Yeah.
suddenly becoming necessities.
Right, utterly altering consumption patterns.
It's quite striking how demand for something as seemingly, innocuous as tourist items can completely flip a traditional economy.
Yeah, shifting it away from vital food production.
And manufacturing souvenirs.
And that forces food importation, leads to dietary changes, often less nutritious ones.
And then you have missionaries introducing new religions, replacing traditional spiritual systems.
Altering cosmology, ritual, ceremony, the whole worldview.
So even just tourism itself, when it infiltrates small societies, can radically change their daily living patterns and conditions.
The pressure really is constant, unrelenting.
Okay, let's zero in on one of the most powerful and often tragic drivers of change, colonization. This is a process where one society occupies another's territory and assumes control, not just of the land, but of the people living there.
And the original society facing colonization often confronts several, dire outcomes.
Like acculturation.
Yeah, being integrated into the new, more powerful society. Sometimes that goes so far it becomes ethnocide.
Which is the destruction of the original culture, even if the people physically survive.
Exactly. The deliberate destruction. Or, in the most extreme cases, they face genocide of the physical extermination of their group.
But they might just be pushed out entirely.
Often by force, yeah. Compelled to adjust to totally new natural and cultural environments.
And if the colonized survive, they endure subjugation.
Right. Suppression of their traditional practices, their beliefs. Social roles can be drastically altered. Women often lose status in the new colonial society, for instance.
Crucially, they often lose their sovereignty, their cultural identity.
This whole ongoing process is what we call colonialism, and it really defines the struggle of many Fourth World groups, even today.
The chapter uses that analogy of the fictional Borg, be assimilated or be destroyed.
It's apt, unfortunately. And while some Fourth World groups say indigenous peoples in North America and Australia have survived and even regained some sovereignty,
Others haven't been so fortunate.
many others, particularly in places like Brazil, Indonesia, they remain deeply entangled in its effects. Even where active colonization has ended, those colonial attitudes of superiority often persist.
Which hampers recovery and justice.
Absolutely. The source mentions the example of the lethargic approach of American law enforcement to cases of murdered and missing Native women. That points to ongoing colonial attitudes about the value placed on indigenous lives.
We've touched on these concepts, but the chapter draws some really sharp distinctions. You mentioned acculturation integration into a more powerful society.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be voluntary. Think about immigrants to the U.S. who acculturate over time, but often still keep an ethnic identity.
But for indigenous societies encountering dominant groups, it's often forced.
Frequently forced, yeah.
Hmm.
And it often traps people in despair and poverty, struggling to survive in a new society that just isn't theirs.
And if that acculturation is total, the original culture is fully abandoned. That's assimilation.
That's assimilation.
And forced assimilation can directly lead to ethnocide.
Right. The destruction of the society, even if the people survive. Language, religion, subsistence, other fundamental systems.
Hmm.
They're systematically suppressed, destroyed, replaced by the conquerors,
The goal being.
to remake the indigenous society into one suitable for exploitation. The chapter uses that striking term, ethnoforming.
Like terraforming a planet.
Exactly, a chilling parallel. And unfortunately, this was intentional U.S. policy towards Native Americans in the 1800s, and a goal of some missionary programs, too.
And then there's genocide, physical extermination.
Which can be deliberate, a planned campaign. Or sometimes it's the incidental outcome of activities carried out with little regard for the impact on others.
Like disease introduction.
A key example is the unintentional introduction of diseases like smallpox to Native American populations by Europeans after 1492. Tragically, led to millions of deaths. Incidental genocide.
But we also see many examples of deliberate genocide, sometimes called ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, Armenians by the Turks in WWI, Jews by the Nazis in WWII. More recently, Cambodian, Bosnian, Rwandan genocides. And the chapter points to ongoing conflicts with elements of genocide in places like Darfur, Myanmar, Ukraine.
It's a heavy topic.
It is. But here's where it gets, well, truly fascinating in a different way. Even from such profound destruction, new societies and ethnic identities can form over time.
That's ethnogenesis.
Exactly. It's not just survival. It's like a creative rebirth. It can happen in several ways.
How so?
Populations might become isolated and forge a new identity. Societies might split, like the Americans from the British, or two or more societies, maybe largely destroyed by ethnocide or genocide, might sort of coalesce to form a new composite one.
Or sometimes colonial administrators just draw lines on a map.
Right, inadvertently creating new nations and identities. We've seen that in West Africa and the Middle East, leading to conflicts that, persist today over those borders.
The chapter gives two really compelling examples of ethnogenesis. First, the Seminole people.
Yes. Fascinating story.
After wars in the 1600s, Creek people fled into Spanish Florida. There, they absorbed survivors from local native groups hit hard by the Spanish and even took in runaway black slaves.
And formed a new society.
A powerful new society, the Seminole, organized along traditional lines. Then the U.S. acquired Florida, tried to remove them, led to a brutal 7-year war.
Many were forcibly removed to Indian Territory.
But an astonishing 500 or so remained hidden in the Florida swamps. Incredible resilience.
And those families eventually established the formal Seminole tribe of Florida in 1957.
Right. Now they're federally recognized, have gained considerable economic power. Casinos, even bought the Hard Rock brand.
Yeah, cafes, hotels, and that unique agreement allowing Florida State University to use Seminole as their mascot. It really highlights their distinct identity born from that process.
In the second example,
The Métis in eastern Canada. These are the descendants of European fur traders and their Native American wives, usually Cree.
so a blend of cultures from the start.
Over centuries, yeah. They developed a truly distinct cultural identity. They speak a unique language called Michif, a blend of Cree and French alongside French and English.
And they formed the Métis National Council in 1983.
Right, and they're now recognized as a third Aboriginal group in Canada, alongside Native American Indians and Inuit.
But there's an emerging issue there.
Yeah, a growing number of people are claiming Métis ancestry, which impacts who gets government benefits and kind of challenges the definition of this relatively new identity. It's complex.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to those intertwined processes. Globalization and development. How are they shaping societies today?
Well, globalization is basically the process where societies get intricately connected to the global economic system, what the chapter calls the world system.
And this happens mainly through Western commercial interests expanding.
Primarily, yeah, often with government support. It started centuries ago with European colonization, sailing ships carrying goods, making European powers, later Americans, incredibly wealthy.
But it really ramped up after 1750.
With the Industrial Revolution in Europe, yeah,
Yeah.
just unleashed vast quantities of manufactured goods for trade. Today, that process is incredibly intensive, extensive, reaching every corner of the globe.
Although,
Although, interestingly, we're now seeing maybe the beginnings of a movement away from this global market as some countries strive for less dependence.
a major consequence of globalization is the spread of Western stuff, technology, values, food, art.
The whole worldview, really. Think McDonald's, Starbucks, seemingly on every corner globally.
But the chapter emphasizes this isn't necessarily a good thing.
No. As people adopt Western values, they often lose traditional ones, like adopting a high-fat Western diet instead of traditional foods. Serious health consequences follow.
This homogenization of culture.
It means a loss of cultural diversity, which is, well, a bad omen for global resilience.
And tragically, the globalized system also includes the horrific business of human trafficking.
For sex and slavery, yes. Millions of victims, often migrants and refugees from fourth world groups, likely targeted in the cruel hope they won't be missed or authorities won't bother looking. It's grim.
So globalization really fueled colonization too, using both soft power
Diplomacy, media, propaganda,
and hard power.
military economic force. And where government control is absent, private companies often illegally use hard power to exploit resources.
Leading to devastating consequences, like indigenous people murdered protesting deforestation in the Amazon.
Exactly. Even very small societies today are connected to and dependent on global manufacturing and trade. It's pervasive.
And development. How does that fit in?
It's closely related. Once companies or governments identify profitable resources, the exploitation or development of those resources begins within host countries.
So those countries start adopting characteristics of industrialized societies?
Resource extraction, building modern infrastructure, global trade, yeah. And development is often eagerly sought by many third world countries, wanting their piece of the pie.
But for most fourth world people within those developing countries,
It often results in acculturation and ethnocide. Indigenous people are frequently seen as being in the way of development.
having few rights, little power to resist.
Exactly. They get rapidly colonized, killed, or assimilated, driven into poverty. And their unique knowledge, built over millennia, is tragically lost, irreversibly.
And beyond the human cost, there are serious environmental consequences too.
Huge ones. Infrastructure for these projects, roads, utilities, worker towns, often built with little regard for the environment. Mineral extraction, like gold mining. Industrial timber cutting, particularly destructive.
And rarely fixed afterwards.
Rarely any remediation, like landscape restoration or tree replanting, no. And traditional agricultural systems, stable, renewable, productive for millennia, are being replaced by Western industrialized agriculture.
With its chemicals, mechanical labor.
And resulting pollution. It might boost production short term, but the long-term environmental impacts are detrimental. We saw it happen with traditional Chinese and ancient Egyptian agricultural systems being replaced.
Okay, so clearly colonization and development aren't just passively accepted.
Almost ever. Traditional peoples resist.
How does that resistance look?
It can range from open warfare Think of the many wars Native Americans fought against European and American encroachment, to rebellions against established authorities like native peoples in Mexico against the Spanish.
And even if they survived those conflicts?
They often continued to face oppression, yeah.
But there are other reactions too, like revitalization movements.
Right, another powerful reaction. These are attempts to revitalize or restore an affected society, often using actions and ceremonies believed to be aided by supernatural power, by magic.
And some originate with a single individual, a kind of messiah figure.
Sometimes, yeah. Someone claiming a profound connection to the supernatural.
The chapter was 3 really compelling examples. First, the ghost dance. Native American societies in North America were devastated by contact. In 1869, a northern Paiute man, Woodsy Wob, had visions. If they did the right ceremonies, the dead in the game would return.
That first ghost dance was adopted by many, moderately successful in revitalizing societies, but
Didn't bring the full desired results. Woodsy Wob later blamed evil spirits.
then, late 1880s, a second northern Paiute prophet, Wovoka, emerged, led a new ghost dance.
What was his vision?
In 1889, supernatural messengers told him native societies were valuable, they should live in peace and harmony with each other, and with whites work hard, stop fighting. If they did, they'd be reunited with the dead.
A peaceful message.
Very peaceful.
Yeah.
And it spread rapidly.
Mm.
However, by the time it reached the Great Plains in 1890, it got tragically exaggerated and militarized.
How so?
It morphed into this message of restoring a pre-white condition through the death of whites, the return of bison, resurrection of the dead. Rumors even spread about special ghost shirts that could stop bullets, none of which Wovoka preached, none of it.
And the U.S. government feared this militarized version.
They did, not because they believed whites would be eliminated, but they worried desperate Native Americans might resume fighting, thinking the shirts gave them an advantage.
Which led to
Arrests, the tragic murder of Sioux Chief Sitting Bull, a ban on the ghost dance, and the infamous massacre of 150 peaceful Sioux at Wounded Knee Creek.
terrible.
The dance went underground, but continued for years. Eventually, Wovoka's true message, just live a good life, was understood. It's still practiced by some groups today.
Okay, second example. The Longhouse religion of the Haudenosaunee.
The Iroquois, yeah, in
Okay.
upper New York State.
By the late 1700s, they were largely defeated by the new Americans, living in dire poverty.
Right. Then, in 1799, a Haudenosaunee prophet, Handsome Lake, had a vision.
What did he preach?
Give up alcohol, avoid laziness, be faithful to spouses, be more responsible. It was this remarkable blend of traditional Haudenosaunee religion and Christian elements.
And it formed the Longhouse religion.
Yes, and it was largely successful in preserving their spiritual beliefs and practices. Followers moved to Canada, where the religion is still practiced.
And the third example, cargo cults.
This term generally covers a series of ceremonial complexes in the South Pacific aimed at bringing change.
The classic meaning relates to WWII.
Exactly. An effort to bring back the Western foods and materials, the cargo they enjoyed, during the island occupations in WWII.
So these islanders were self-sufficient for millennia.
Largely, yes. But after European contact, they became dependent on Western goods. Then during WWII, first the Japanese, then the Americans occupied many islands, brought huge amounts of goods, paid locals for labor.
And when the Americans left after the war, they took the cargo.
They took the cargo. So some island groups started these religious ceremonies, used magic, trying to bring it back. They even imitated American military activities, marching, building mock airfields,
Hoping to attract planes.
hoping planes would land and disgorge cargo. Yeah.
Did it work?
Well, these efforts largely failed in their immediate goal, though eventually these populations did become part of the world system and got access to Western goods through other means.
Beyond these spiritual movements, some reactions are more practical.
Definitely. Like in Australia during colonization, indigenous people gathered around ranches, stations for work and food. But starting in the 70s, some moved away from those stations.
Back to traditional lands.
Yeah, to practice their traditional lifestyle, become self-sufficient, regain sovereignty. It's called the outstation movement.
And similarly, some Inuit families in Canada returning to dog sleds.
Instead of snowmobiles, right? Because snowmobiles tie you to the world system fuel parts. And today, a lot of indigenous resistance focuses on using legal systems to address grievances. It's an ongoing struggle.
Okay, so sometimes when maybe all other options seem exhausted, the most direct way to deal with change is just to move.
Right. Which brings us to migration, the movement of a group, emigrating from one place, immigrating to another to set up a new home.
And people migrate for lots of reasons.
Poor living conditions, warfare, violence, and increasingly climate change. But the thing is, if a group migrates, it's usually to a place where other people already live.
Which can create new problems.
Potentially, yeah, new conflicts.
Right.
A classic example is the English moving to North America for religious freedom.
Only to become colonizers themselves.
To the detriment of Native Americans, exactly.
And closely related is a diaspora.
Yeah, that's the movement, often forced maybe by genocide, of segments of a population dispersed into a new area, but without replacing the original inhabitants.
Like the slave trade.
One of the largest, most tragic diasporas, forcibly bringing Africans to the Americas. Other examples include the Jewish diaspora after the Holocaust or the Irish to the U.S. during the potato famine.
Then we also have refugees.
Groups forced to relocate rapidly due to war, oppression, things like that. Some stay within their own country. Many move to neighboring countries, often ending up in refugee camps.
And asylum seekers.
Those are more individuals or families forced to relocate due to unstable economic or political situations, high crime rates. They generally apply for asylum, for protection in a new country.
A really current and growing issue is climate change migration.
Absolutely critical.
Mhm.
Millions are already moving. Tens of millions more expected to face this, becoming climate refugees.
Like the drought in Central America.
Prolonged drought linked to climate change, compelling people to migrate north to the U.S., creating huge domestic and international political issues.
And this isn't just international, right? It happens within countries, too.
For sure. Think of the U.S. in the 1930s, the Dust Bowl. Prolonged drought plus poor farming practices forced many farmers in the Midwest to relocate.
And today?
Changing weather patterns, rising temperatures, stronger storms, floods, wildfires. They're all creating internal movements of climate refugees.
Like communities in the Mississippi River mouth.
Being displaced by rising sea levels and eroding delta. Coastal cities like Miami facing future flooding. In Alaska, erosion from sea level rise is destroying coastal villages, cemeteries of native Inuit groups.
It's happening now.
Right now. And as the planet warms, entire ecozones are slowly shifting. North-south.
Changing where plants and animals live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Directly impacting subsistence systems for countless societies. Some farms are being abandoned. Other lands might become suitable for farming.
But pastoralists like the Maasai, they can't just move their herds easily.
No, because those new territories are already occupied. It leads to a very uncertain future for them.
And entire nations are threatened.
Especially low-lying island nations. Tuvalu in the South Pacific, the Maldives in the Indian Ocean. They're under direct threat from sea level rise. Higher islands are taking measures. Tonga's government is already moving settlements, farms away from the shores.
Wow. Okay, finally, let's look at one of the more, maybe, ambiguous responses to change. Cultural tourism.
Yeah, something some traditional societies have adopted to try and mitigate colonization impacts.
So cultural tourism broadly is just exposing tourists to new things, people, societies.
Pretty much. Not new either. Romans toured Greek sites. Europeans toured Roman, Egyptian sites. Today, archaeological site tourism is big business. Some national economies, like Egypt's, depend heavily on it.
But there's a specific form, visiting traditional societies.
Right, like visiting the Hopi in Arizona, taking a guided tour of Walpi Village. Though, interestingly, Hopi ceremonies were once open to the public.
But disrespectful tourists ended that.
Largely, yeah. Though some social ceremonies have since reopened, more remote societies can be visited on organized tours, the Dani, in New Guinea's Baliam Valley.
Where you can interact, take pictures, see a reenactment battle.
Exactly. Similar experiences with the Maasai in East Africa, even some Yanomami groups in Brazil, though they tend to be more acculturated.
Which brings up that critical ethical question. Is this kind of tourism actually ethical?
It's a tough one. The chapter reminds us any contact impacts a group society. So is the entertainment value for a few tourists worth the price of those impacts? Especially when the host communities might not fully control or understand them.
But on the other side,
On the other side, indigenous groups themselves often benefit economically. Since they've already been contacted, already impacted by the world system, and they're willing to host tourists, then why not?
they could use the money.
They could certainly use the money, though it's often murky how much profit they actually receive. And you could argue there's educational value for the tourist.
So it's a real conundrum.
Truly a complex ethical dilemma, no easy answers.
Wow, what a journey through change and development. We've covered so much. From the constant nature of change driving cultural evolution.
To the profound impacts of colonization, leading to acculturation, ethnocide, even genocide.
And yet, amidst all that pressure, societies show incredible resilience. giving rise to new identities through ethnogenesis.
Resisting through powerful revitalization movements like the ghost dance, the longhouse religion, cargo cults,
We also unpack the complexities of globalization and development.
and how societies navigate change through migration, diaspora, and that ambiguous terrain of cultural tourism.
This deep dive really hammers home that knowledge is most valuable when you understand it and can apply it. That intricate dance between internal resilience and external pressures. It just defines human societies across time and space.
Absolutely. And it highlights how essential critical thinking is, especially in this world of information overload. There's always more to learn about the forces shaping us.
So, what does this all mean for you listening? Maybe consider this provocative thought. As you observe the world around you, how many social structures that seem totally static are actually in a constant, maybe subtle state of flux, either adapting, resisting, or perhaps slowly, almost imperceptibly, being reborn?
Hmm. Something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into change and development. We really hope you found it both insightful and maybe even inspiring.
Yeah, and a warm thank you from the Last Minute Lecture team. We definitely appreciate you being here.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.